Across all cartoons, let's say movies and television shows, there are a few tropes that you might find in common, one being that heroes sound American and villains sound foreign. This is something surprising that I found, but this is the result of two researchers leading a study, sociologist Calvin Gidney and Julie Dobrow, a senior lecturer at Tufts who specializes in issues of children and media. And what they found in a lot of different kids' movies was typically the villain, and they used The Lion King as an example from Gidney himself. If you look at Mufasa and Scar, they're ostensibly brothers, right? And they're ostensibly not really, it's hard to paint an ethnicity on them because they're animals. They're right. African, but they're animals. Scar has an aristocratic English voice supplied by Jeremy Irons. And Mufasa sounds like a warm American
All-American
baritone.
even, yeah.
You know, James Earl Jones sounded great over there, and He did a great job.
He did.
He's a great in everything. And it's odd that they would do this, that they were brothers. But looking at this, it does follow a trend. And when you look at the hyenas in this, according to Gidney, they spoke in either African American English or English with a Spanish accent. And it follows a code that they found in a study that I'm going to get to soon, which shows that typically villains have an accent,
or some kind of affectation,
and typically their minions or sub-villains are associated with an accent that is associated with having a low socioeconomic status, according to this report, which is interesting because these shows and movies are targeted toward children, and children do pick up a lot from media.
All the social cues of how to envision when they hear something, what are they supposed to envision, or how that person is treated. Like Cruella de Vil, the fact that her henchmen are Cockney and she gives them zero respect whatsoever.
Precisely.
Then you start to think, well, anyone who talks like that should do what I say, otherwise I can kick them, and that seems socially acceptable.
So in the study, Gidney and Dobrow had a team of coders analyze 323 animated TV characters using measures such as ethnic and gender identification, physical appearance, hero or villain status, and other linguistic markers. And the coders tested a random sample of 12 shows, which spanned a variety of networks, airtimes, and genres. And they do mark certain traits to certain accents with this.
I think it's really interesting as well that working in voiceover, that this has always been a thing from any mentor I've ever had, that when they talk about villains or minions or anything like that you always you always pick where are they from in the real world to base it off of, and it's never, oh, they're from Beverly Hills and now they happen to be a minion.
It's regional dialects.
Yeah, it's literally, you need to have somebody who's got a low class Boston accent and then they also happen to be a lizard demon. And you're like, but why are they from Boston? Like, what does it have to do? It's like, well, people naturally associate that with maybe untrustworthy. And I'm just sitting there being like, ooh, really? Really? And like, that's what they're asking for.
You shouldn't trust people who work for a living.
Who work for a living. And then that is literally when you go in, this is like when they're writing these things, that this is kind of what happens. I do appreciate that in a lot of video games, they are getting away from that. But like you're saying, for broadcast television, that small children are absorbing and learning social cues from, that is most definitely not the case.
They did find an interesting notation about one specific group, saying speakers of British English are portrayed dichotomously as either the epitome of refinement and elegance or as the embodiment of effete evil. What general sociolinguistic theory would suggest is that American adults tend to evaluate British dialect as sounding smarter. So there is a difference there.
Whether that smart is for good or for evil. Either way, they're not going to be blundering around.
Right. So the binary distinction here is heroes are like us and villains are not like us, or whatever is considered the conventional thing to be.
Right. Yeah. The idealistic archetype.
I have a mid-Atlantic TV-friendly voice. That must mean I'm a hero.
I'm a hero.
No, not necessarily. They also found that in this, that the use of German, Eastern European, and Russian accents for animated villains is likely related to American hostilities left over from World War II and the Cold War. But with that, you would think about what other, relevant political events have happened.
Yeah, that you might model it off of.
They did note that they're no more likely in children's TV today to use, let's say, Korean accents or North Korean accents specifically, or any sort of Middle Eastern accent than they were in the past. Instead, they do stick to Slavic accents, German accents, Italian gangster-sounding henchmen,
the mafia,
stuff
yeah,
like that.
Exactly. Do you think that's partly because in that time period, entertainment for the masses was being created on a large scale for the first time, I think, in history, and that because that worked and because previous generations found that to, that made sense to them, that we were just kind of sticking with the mold? Yeah,
I was reading more into the research, and they found that they were just kind of imitating things that were successful in the past.
That worked, yeah, it worked, so why?
There's a first generation that did it this way.
Okay.
And then it just kind of stayed as something that does well, and then therefore, perhaps unknowingly, created a trope that certain sounding people are bad and certain sounding people are good.
It's crazy, the brother thing with Lion King, it actually mentions, and I was gonna bring it up, but it actually mentions the show Phineas and Ferb, that Dr. Doofenshmirtz has this very comical,
what?
generic.
Someone with the name Doofenshmirtz?
Doofenshmirtz.
Doesn't have an American sounding voice?
But it's crazy though, because his brother, he has a brother in the show who's mayor of the town. It's a great show.
I've never seen this show before.
Oh God, it's quite amusing. I enjoy it. I've had some friends who were on it over the years, and it was a lot of fun. And I watched it for reference, and I was just like, yeah, and I binged the entire thing. Anyways, he has a brother who is the mayor of the town, who has a almost 1940s radio voice, that transatlantic American affectation voice. And you're like, wait a second, they literally show flashbacks throughout the series of them growing up together in this fictitious Eastern European country.
So that would indicate that
he has no
stems
accent.
From evilness?
Yeah, exactly, that like his accent, even though his mother and all the other characters have this original accent, him now as mayor and the good guy that, Dr. Doofenshmirtz fights against every episode, has shed the accent. And now he is the epitome and the poster child for good and community service and everything that one should strive towards.
Like when someone, isn't necessarily from, let's say someone is an immigrant family.
Right.
And then they just decide that I'm gonna shed this and sound American now, so
when my mother
succeed.
immigrated, it was the same thing, that they were like, everyone told them you have to get rid of your accent, otherwise people are going to perceive you in this way. And they were like, I don't understand why, but okay.
Well, I think we're starting to understand why.
Right.
I mean, this is certainly one segment of it. But what they found in this is that the patterns seem to imply that children see a correlation between evil and foreignness, or evil and having low socioeconomic status, which is not healthy. And they may be not knowingly applying this to their lives and quite possibly internalizing this about themselves.
Absolutely,
which is scary.
Yeah, you shouldn't watch Saturday morning cartoons and all of a sudden be like, oh, I guess I can never strive to be anything more than.
The bad guy sounds like daddy. Is dad evil? Am I evil?
Yeah.
Am I a bad person? Which is, I mean, all of it, none of it is good.
Yeah.
None of it is good. Accent signaling is a very subtle way to ethnically stereotype, and it's the kind of thing that gathers and you're not exactly sure where it came from. War
departments have used it for a very long time in trying to rally a population against another population by mocking them or by painting them a certain way. That's, this is not new, and unfortunately it does have its basis in that kind of, like you're saying, that struggle between social classes and nationalities and stuff, so it doesn't help anybody.
No. But it does sound silly in cartoons.
And it's funny, especially if there's a platypus spy who defeats Dr. Doofenshmirtz every episode. That actually happens.
I don't know what you're talking about. Audience, have you internalized any of these based on cartoons you watched as a child? You probably aren't as an adult, though it is possible. Please let us know below, and please like and subscribe for more.